My family turned their backs on me after my wife and my brother conspired against me. Now they beg for my forgiveness, but it's too late. I'm Kalen, 34M, and my life was turned upside down in ways I never could have imagined. For years, I had worked tirelessly to build a life, balancing a demanding career, my marriage, and trying to keep the peace within my family. But what I didn't know was that all the while, my wife, Lyra, 32F, and my brother, Oren, 36M, were scheming behind my back, plotting to destroy everything I had built. It all started innocently enough, or so I thought. Lyra had been distant, cold, but I chalked it up to the stresses of life. Our marriage had always been solid, at least I thought so. Oren, my older brother, had always been more successful in his career, always in the spotlight, always the one my parents praised. But I never resented him. I was focused on my own life and career, keeping a healthy distance from his constant need for validation. But all of that changed when I came home early from a business trip and caught them in my own bed. I had planned the trip as a way to secure a big deal, one that would ensure my promotion at work and give me the financial stability I needed to finally push my family to be proud of me. But when I opened the door to our bedroom that afternoon, it wasn't the quiet solitude I was expecting. It was Lyra and Oren, tangled together, their bodies intertwined in a betrayal I couldn't fathom. The shock was so profound that it took me a moment to even register what was happening. Oren's face was flush with pleasure, and Lyra's eyes widened with panic, but it was too late. The truth was already there, too obvious to deny. My brother and my wife had conspired against me. They had taken everything I had worked for and turned it into a cruel joke. I felt my world collapse in on itself. There was no more room for denial, no more rationalization. The people I trusted most in the world had betrayed me in the worst possible way, and I knew, right then, that nothing would ever be the same. The days that followed were a blur. I left my house, unable to stay in the same space that had been tainted by their treachery. Oren tried to call, but I couldn't bear to listen to his excuses. Lyra sent me messages, begging for forgiveness, pleading with me to understand that it was a mistake. But none of it mattered. How could I forgive them? How could I trust either of them ever again? But it didn't end there. My family, the ones I had relied on for support, sided with Lyra and Oren. My parents, who had always favored Oren, dismissed my claims as exaggerations, and refused to believe that their perfect son, the one they had always held up as the model of success, could do something so vile. They even went so far as to claim that I had been too focused on my career to notice Lyra's needs. The betrayal didn't just come from my wife and brother, it came from everyone I thought would stand by me. My mother and father told me I was overreacting, that I should forgive them and move on. My friends, once close, distanced themselves, unwilling to get involved in what they saw as a family drama. But I wasn't going to forgive them. I wasn't going to let them win. The anger that boiled inside me pushed me to do something I never thought I'd be capable of. I began to plot my revenge. I used my newfound anger to fuel my career. I dove into work like I never had before, pushing for promotions, taking on projects, and leaving my old life behind. But while I built my new empire, I worked in silence to bring my family down. I dug into Oren's finances, finding irregularities and shady business dealings he had hidden. I knew that if I could expose him, I could finally tear down the life he had built on lies. At the same time, I began to destroy Lyra's reputation. I knew that she had been using her charm to maintain her position in the social circles I once moved in. I quietly leaked information about her affair with Oren to the people she had befriended over the years, her friends who had looked the other way while she destroyed my life. It wasn't just about getting revenge on her, it was about exposing the truth. The first piece of my plan fell into place when I managed to get Oren's financial documents in the hands of the right people. His shady dealings were soon exposed, and suddenly, he was under investigation for embezzling company funds and tax fraud. The public fallout was swift, and his business began to crumble. The people who once admired him were now questioning his integrity. His carefully constructed life was falling apart, and I couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction. Lyra's fall was slower, more insidious. I spread rumors about her affair, each whisper more damaging than the last. Her friends distanced themselves from her, and soon she found herself ostracized from the social circles she had once thrived in. She tried to salvage her reputation, but the truth had already begun to spread, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. The real blow came when I used the leverage I had gained over my family's wealth to secure my own financial independence. I started my own company, with a vision that surpassed anything I had ever dreamed of. With my hard work, I quickly became a force to be reckoned with in the business world. I had built something that belonged solely to me, and it felt better than anything I had ever achieved with my family's name. But the final act of revenge came when I confronted my parents. They had ignored my calls, tried to justify their support for Oren and Lyra. But I knew I had to put them in their place. I gathered all the evidence of their complicity, of their willingness to overlook the actions of their son and daughter-in-law, and presented it to them in front of the rest of the family. "You've been complicit in this all along," I said, standing tall as they shrunk under my gaze. "You chose them over me, and now you will have to live with that decision." Their faces, once so proud, were now painted with shame and regret. My father tried to say something, but I silenced him. "It's too late," I said coldly. "You wanted me to forgive, but I'll never forgive you for what you've done." The next few months were marked by the fallout from my family's disgrace. Oren's business collapsed entirely, and he was left with nothing but the ruins of the empire he had built on lies. Lyra disappeared from the public eye, her social status irreparably damaged. My parents, once the proud figures of the family, withdrew into obscurity, too ashamed to show their faces. As for me, I continued to rise. My business flourished, and I made connections that ensured my future was secured. Every step I took was a reminder that I didn't need them. I had built everything from the ground up, with no help from the people who were supposed to support me. And in the quiet moments, when the world around me fell silent, I allowed myself a rare feeling, a sense of victory. It wasn't just about business, about wealth, or success, it was about showing them all that I could rise, and I could do it without them. The aftermath of my revenge continued to reverberate through my family and my life. My parents had become ghosts of their former selves, retreating into their shame. They no longer attended family gatherings, no longer reached out, their pride shattered beyond repair. But there was still something hollow about it. As much as I'd destroyed them, there was still a small part of me that couldn't fully rid myself of the weight they had put on me for so long. I continued to bury myself in my work, pushing harder, expanding my empire with an intensity that bordered on obsession. Every deal, every negotiation was another victory over the family who had cast me aside. But as the years passed, I started to realize that success wasn't enough to fill the void left by their betrayal. In the quietest moments, when I was alone in my penthouse apartment or sitting at my desk, the weight of it all became harder to ignore. The loneliness had a way of creeping in at night, especially when the glow of my computer screens and the endless emails were no longer distracting me. I had achieved more than I ever thought possible, but at what cost? I realized that I had been so focused on my revenge, on proving I could rise above them, that I had forgotten what it meant to truly live. To have someone to share the success with. To be happy. It was during this time of reflection that I met Ariella, 28F, a brilliant marketing strategist I hired to oversee my brand's next big campaign. She was sharp, driven, and beautiful in a way that left me speechless when we first met. But more than that, she was everything I had built my life to be, unapologetically strong, fiercely independent, and capable of creating her own empire. Our professional relationship grew into something more, something that I hadn't expected. She was smart, ambitious, and saw through the layers I had built around myself, understanding my need for control and my deep-seated fears. She didn't pity me, didn't offer me sympathy. She simply saw me. It was both terrifying and exhilarating. As the months went on, Ariella and I grew closer, our professional respect turning into something more intimate. But even as I allowed myself to become vulnerable with her, the remnants of my past, my family's betrayal, loomed over me. It wasn't just the fear of being hurt again, it was the constant questioning of whether I could truly let someone in again, knowing what it had cost me the first time. One night, as we sat together on the balcony of my apartment, the city lights stretching far below us, she looked at me, her expression serious. "Zarek, I know you've been through a lot. I can see it in the way you work, in the way you push people away, even me. But I need you to understand something. You don't need to carry this weight alone anymore." I stared at her, unsure of how to respond. It was the first time anyone had spoken so plainly to me about the pain I carried, and it stirred something deep inside. I had spent so many years fighting alone, thinking that the only way forward was through power, success, and isolation. But Ariella was offering something else, a chance to be seen, to be understood. But my past was not something that could be left behind so easily. One morning, a year after I had taken control of my life, my phone rang with a name I hadn't thought about in a long time, Oren. His voice on the other end was strained, full of regret. "Zarek, I need to talk. It's about the company. About everything." I could hear the desperation in his tone, and I couldn't help but laugh bitterly. After everything that had happened, after all the damage he had done, now he wanted to talk? Now he wanted to explain himself? "You've got a hell of a nerve," I said, my voice cold. "What makes you think I care about anything you have to say, Oren?" "Please," he continued, ignoring my sarcasm, "I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I need to make things right. I need you to listen to me, just once." Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet with him, just to hear what he had to say. When I walked into the cafe where we had agreed to meet, I saw him sitting in the corner booth, looking almost unrecognizable. Gone was the confident, entitled man who had once made every decision for our family. This Oren was a shell of himself, slumped over, his clothes disheveled, and his eyes hollow. "I never thought I'd see the day," I said, my voice dripping with disdain. "After everything you've done, you actually think you can walk in here and ask for a second chance?" He sighed heavily and looked up at me, his eyes wet with unshed tears. "I've lost everything, Zarek. My business is gone. My reputation's in tatters. And Lyra. She's gone too. I thought I could control everything, but in the end, I destroyed it all. I destroyed us." There was no satisfaction in hearing him say those words. No sense of closure. Just emptiness. "Why should I care, Oren? You took everything from me. You and Lyra. I don't owe you anything." He looked down, shame filling his face. "I know. And I'm sorry. I can't take back what I've done, but I want to make things right. I want to show you that I can be the person I should have been all along. I'm not asking for your forgiveness, but I'm asking for a chance." I stood up, feeling the weight of the moment settle heavily on my shoulders. This was my moment. The last piece of the puzzle. I had fought for so long to take back control of my life, to climb above the wreckage they had caused. And now, here he was, begging for a second chance. But the answer was clear. "You've already had your chance," I said coldly, turning to leave. "I'm done with you, Oren. You lost everything when you betrayed me. Don't come back." As I walked away, a strange sense of finality settled over me. I had gotten what I wanted, more than revenge, more than success. I had gotten peace. But even with that peace, there was still a part of me that wasn't quite whole. The pieces of the past, the betrayals, the scars, those things would never truly go away. But now, they no longer controlled me. And as I stepped into the life I had built, side by side with Ariella, I knew that while my family had chosen their path, I had made my own. And it was a path that led to something far greater than they could ever offer me. Days turned into weeks, and the strange sense of finality that came with Oren's failed plea slowly began to settle in my mind. I had faced the past head-on, confronted it, and now it was finally behind me. But even as I turned the page on my family's betrayal, there was still an empty space inside me, something I couldn't fill with the success, the wealth, or even the genuine love Ariella offered me. Ariella had been incredible. Supportive. Unwavering. But there was a wall I kept up around her, one I had never let down for anyone. I had become so adept at surviving alone that letting someone in, even her, felt like a risk I wasn't ready to take. Still, she was patient. She didn't push, and in a strange way, that patience made me even more aware of the distance I was creating between us. Then, out of nowhere, something unexpected came into my life, something that set off a chain of events I never anticipated. It was a call from an old family lawyer, one I hadn't spoken to in years. The message was simple, cryptic even: "Zarek, there's something you need to know. Something that changes everything." I didn't recognize the name at first, but something in the tone made my blood run cold. It wasn't just about money or assets, there was an urgency to it, something that made me feel like I was being dragged back into the storm I had worked so hard to escape. When I showed up to his office the next day, I didn't know what to expect. The lawyer, a man named Victor Alford, 52M, was sitting behind his desk, shuffling through papers. His office was a throwback to an older, more luxurious time: rich leather chairs, dark oak furniture, a thick carpet that felt like it was from another era. The air in the room smelled like aging paper and too many years of things unsaid. "Mr. Rith," he began, his voice low and serious. "I understand this is a bit unexpected. But I believe you have the right to know what happened before your father passed. Your family. They've been hiding something." He pushed a file toward me, and I opened it, already knowing that this wouldn't be a simple revelation. My father had been ill for some time, but I didn't know how close he'd been to death before he passed. And now, as I read through the documents, trust funds, hidden investments, legal disputes, I realized just how much my family had kept from me. "Your father. Your parents had secretly been transferring assets for years," Victor continued. "It wasn't just your brother or your wife who were involved. Your parents were the ones behind most of the schemes." I stared at the papers, unable to process what I was seeing. The numbers were staggering, the kind of wealth that could change anyone's life overnight. But this wasn't just money. This was a web of manipulation. A conspiracy. My parents had been setting things up, siphoning off money, creating secret funds. And it was all in preparation for something bigger, something I wasn't supposed to find out. Suddenly, the air in the room grew thick, like the walls themselves were closing in. I was overwhelmed with the sickening realization that everything I had built, everything I thought was mine, had been tainted by their manipulation. I had spent years clawing my way up, only to realize that my family's entire world was built on lies. Why didn't they tell me this? I asked, my voice quieter than I intended. Victor's face darkened, and he leaned forward. Because they didn't want you to have it. They had plans to pass the fortune off to Oren. Everything was supposed to be his. You were never supposed to know. You were never supposed to rise above them. A sharp pain ran through my chest as I absorbed the weight of his words. It wasn't just about Lyra's betrayal or Oren's greed. It was about my family's complete disregard for me. They had set me up to fail, keeping me in the dark, while they planned a future that didn't even include me. I walked out of that office, my mind racing. My entire perception of my life was unraveling, and I couldn't stop the flood of emotions that followed. Anger. Betrayal. But beneath it all, there was something deeper. A thirst for retribution that burned hotter than anything I had ever felt before. That night, I found myself standing on the balcony of my penthouse, staring out over the city, feeling more alone than I ever had in my life. Ariella had gone home, giving me space after I had told her about the meeting with the lawyer. I didn't want her to see the darkness I was feeling inside. She deserved more than that. I picked up my phone, dialing a number I hadn't used in a while. "Kale," I said when the line picked up. "I need your help. I've got some unfinished business to attend to." Kale, 33M, was someone from my past, a man who had once been a trusted advisor to me when things in my life had been simpler. He was ruthless, smart, and well-connected in ways that were more than useful. If I needed to make my family understand the consequences of their actions, he was the one who could make it happen. "What's the target?" Kale asked, his voice calm and collected. "I'm taking everything from them," I replied coldly, feeling the full weight of my words. "I'm going to expose everything they've done, and I'm going to make them regret ever crossing me." The plan I set in motion was unlike anything I had ever done before. I had always been methodical, taking my time to build my success, but now, this was personal. I would take my family's legacy and destroy it, piece by piece. I used every tool at my disposal, intelligence, connections, resources, to bring them down. I leaked information about my parents' hidden accounts, revealing their secret dealings with shady businesses. I took everything they had built, everything they had stolen from me, and made it public. Oren, once a golden boy in our family, now found himself under investigation, facing potential criminal charges for his role in the illegal activities. The walls were closing in on them faster than they could react. And just when I thought it couldn't get worse for them, I orchestrated the final blow. I exposed the full extent of their manipulation to the media. I wanted everyone to see them for what they truly were, liars, thieves, and traitors. I made sure the world knew that the Rith family, the family who had once been respected, was built on a foundation of deceit. And when the press came for them, when the world turned its back on everything they had known, I stood at the top, watching it all unfold. I didn't feel satisfied. I didn't feel victorious. I felt empty. But I wasn't done. There was one more step to take. One more piece of the puzzle to destroy. And I would do it, even if it cost me everything. Months passed, and the consequences of my actions rippled through every part of my family's life. Oren was facing serious legal charges, embezzlement, tax fraud, and money laundering, all of it exposed for the world to see. My parents, once pillars of the community, found themselves ostracized, their assets frozen, their business connections severed. The empire they had carefully crafted and guarded for so many years had crumbled under the weight of their own dishonesty and greed. But even as I watched their downfall, there was no satisfaction. No sense of justice. Only an overwhelming emptiness. I had done what I set out to do, destroy them, but in the process, I realized that I had destroyed something within myself as well. I sat in my penthouse one evening, staring out at the city below. My phone buzzed on the table beside me, the name Ariella flashing across the screen. I hadn't spoken to her much in the past few weeks, too consumed by my own pursuit of revenge to notice how far I had drifted from her. My heart sank as I answered. "Kaylin, I know what you're doing, and I can't watch this happen anymore," she said, her voice tinged with a mix of sadness and frustration. "You've lost yourself. You're not the man I fell in love with. You've become someone else. Someone I don't even recognize." Her words cut through me like a blade. She was right. I had become someone unrecognizable. I had let my pain, my need for revenge, consume me. In trying to make my family feel the weight of their betrayal, I had hurt the one person who had stood by me through it all. I don't know who I am anymore, Ariella, I admitted, my voice shaky. I've spent so much time focused on tearing them down that I forgot what really mattered. I forgot about you. I forgot about what it means to be happy. I've won, but I've lost myself in the process. There was silence on the other end, and then Ariella's soft voice. Maybe it's time you stop fighting and start healing. You don't need to be defined by your past or by what your family did to you. You can still build something better. But you have to want it. You have to let go of the anger, Kaylin. Her words were a lifeline, pulling me back from the abyss I had been sinking into. I knew she was right. I had fought so hard to avenge the wrongs done to me, but in doing so, I had lost sight of everything that truly mattered, the people who loved me, the future I had the power to build. It was time to make a change. I withdrew from the business world for a while. I pulled back from the chaos I had created. I focused on what really mattered, repairing my relationship with Ariella, rebuilding my sense of self, and rediscovering my purpose. I didn't need to keep fighting to prove I could rise above my family's failures. I had already done that. Now, it was time to rebuild my own life, on my own terms. Months later, I found myself standing at the edge of a new beginning. Ariella and I had worked through the mess I had created. Slowly, I came to terms with the pain, the betrayal, and the anger that had defined me for so long. We moved forward together, not as two people carrying the weight of the past, but as partners building something stronger. As for my family, they continued to live in the ruins of their own making. Oren's name was tarnished beyond repair, his business dealings exposed for what they were, fraudulent and corrupt. My parents, unable to recover from the public disgrace, faded into the background, living out their remaining years in quiet humiliation. They had made their choices, and I had made mine. And as for me? I no longer needed to seek revenge. I had already won the most important battle, the one to reclaim my peace, my happiness, and my future. The ghosts of my past no longer haunted me, and the family that had once defined my life no longer had any power over me. I was free. In the end, the legacy I created was not built on revenge or bitterness. It was built on the lessons I had learned from the pain of betrayal, the importance of love and forgiveness, and the realization that I had the strength to rebuild myself from the ashes of my past.